Okay, so still talking middle childhood. Our kids are in school. This is going to be cognitive development, so how they learn, what new capacities in learning come on board. Hoping a little shorter screencast for you because there's a video I do hope that you'll watch. So let's look at this. Again, when it comes to our cognitive development, we have Piaget and Vygotsky. Vygotsky comes online a lot more now because we're dealing with schools. He's still big in education, but let's look at Piaget first. So Piaget, remember our 2 to 6ers, pre-operational, before logic, a lot of magical thinking, animism, tooth fairy, Easter bunny kind of stuff, theories about why things happen that they come up with, lots of imagination, which is beautiful. And I kind of like that that's kind of a foundation of what we, who we are and when we learn is our imagination. But now we're in school. So, get rid of all of it, get rid of all that fantastical thinking. No, hopefully not. But now we have to get logical. And so it's understandable that these capacities begin to grow in them as they move up in education and in school systems. The ability to reason logically about direct and concrete experiences. Now that's the important part for him. This is concrete operational, direct and concrete experiences. I have to see it to believe it kind of thing. Like you have to show it to me. I have to be able to understand it in a very literal sort of way. They have what we call inductive reasoning at this age first. Now this is all, I'm not sure, again, I'm not sure that it's all like this very, I don't know that we learn kind of just in this straight and narrow kind of way, but this is according to Piaget. So inductive reasoning is that we go from an observation, we see a pattern, and then we generalize it into a theory. So we gather specific pieces of information to create a broader conclusion. Example, you notice that every time you are around a cat, you have itchy eyes, a runny nose, and a swollen throat. You therefore conclude that you have an allergy. That's inductive reasoning. We go from all the pieces and parts and bits and details to a bigger generalized theory or conclusion about something. Now, this does allow for conclusions to be false. Harold is a grandfather. Harold is bald. Therefore, all grandfathers are bald. So we can jump to wrong conclusions based on our observations and the patterns that we see. But this is kind of the beginning of analogies. If you think about it in terms of school and thing, this, hand is to glove as foot is to boot or something like that. How do we begin to see the relationships between things is really beginning to happen. But so another example for this inductive reasoning might be, well, this bird is black and white, this bird swims in the water, this bird lives on ice or whatever, therefore this bird must be a penguin. We kind of build up to our big answer. Classification, kids do this a lot in school. They begin to do this. So we know that in the younger years, when we start to build our schemas, we don't have, they're kind of a little hodgepodgey. Now we really learn how things are classified, that we can organize them into groups. So cats, now can equal lions, tigers, leopards, and the one at home. So we can have all these different sort of classifications. And if you think about it, when kids get into science, they get this, like geology. I know my kid in, I think 4th grade studied some geology. So there's different kinds of rocks. And what are these different rocks? He also studied like the different, kingdoms, phylums, whatever for animals. So all these different ways that we order and classify things. Even like prefixes and suffixes and things like that. Transitive inference, the ability to figure out or infer the unspoken link between one fact or another. So an example, if A is greater than B and B is greater than C and C is greater than D, is A greater than D? So we can take one piece of information and transfer it to another piece of information to come up with an answer. Little kids aren't going to be able to do that as much. They can't do any of these things quite as well. Seriation, the idea that things can be arranged in a series. What comes before 302,456? What letter is before P? So we get the idea of the way things work. Now you ask a little 4-year-old, what number is after 47? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They may start to count. You ask them what letter comes after O. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K. You know, we have to really think about it. We get the ability to be able to create these series based on smaller increments. I still have to do the alphabet in my head a lot sometimes. But like for numbers, we don't have to start at the beginning. We get the idea. So a lot of these come from just things we're doing in school, and that hopefully we're building upon knowledge little by little to be able to build these things up. This inductive reasoning, we're building on little facts that we know in order to create bigger pictures in the details. So what's also important to remember about Piaget is he believes that things happen in terms of we develop the capacity first, and then the environment gives us the opportunity to learn those things. But our development has allowed us the ability to learn those things. And he's really, if you think even about the pre-operational learning of our 2 to 6 year olds, it was about what was missing for logic. What was the, that we couldn't understand the law of conservation, that we judge things based on appearance. And now we're looking at what is the ability to have logic within our mind. We've developed that capacity. What is it creating within us? That ability to infer information, to classify things into different places, to build schemas that are more complex through this. So let's look at Piaget versus Vygotsky. Vygotsky is huge in education still today. We'll hear terms like, okay, so, sorry, another little break. Looking at both Vygotsky, who's big in education, we hear scaffolding, we hear zone of proximal development still a lot, but let's see how these two are different from each other. Piaget, with cognitive theory, considered constructivism. Knowledge is not acquired, but constructed within the mind, based on personal experiences and testing hypotheses. So his is through that assimilation and accommodation, what we do with information that comes in. Do we assimilate? Do we accommodate? Learning comes to that accommodation of new information. But it's all basically a very mind-based approach, that the development happens within the mind in order to allow for this learning to take place. Vygotsky has social constructivism. Society and culture provide frameworks through which kids experience, communicate, and understand reality, that they are apprentices in thinking. Adults and older peers convey how their culture interprets and responds to the world. So knowledge is constructed through the information given by the culture. Piaget, development before learning. Learners cannot be taught key cognitive tasks if they have not reached a particular stage of development. For Vygotsky, learning before development. Social activities become mental processes as child processes experience. Social actions dictate the pace of development. So it's all, this is very outside-in learning. Piaget is very inside-out learning. Piaget believed the child is the source of understanding, not instruction. For Vygotsky, mentors and elders guide learning, letting them participate actively in the learning. So you have guided participation. For Piaget, we have something called schemas, categories of information that represent the known world. They grow more complex with age and learning. For Vygotsky, we have something called scaffolding, adjusting support to fit the child's level of performance. He believed instruction is essential. Piaget believed disequilibrium leads to assimilation, accommodation, and potential growth. And for Vygotsky, we have the zone of proximal development, that they are challenged through this guided participation, through their mentors, through scaffolding, to promote growth in increments that they can handle. Piaget believed that thought drives language, that we think, and that what we think and perceive then drives our expression, whereas Vygotsky believes that language drives thinking. Formal and informal spoken interactions mediate learning. Piaget believed that stages were universal, order-driven, and discontinuous. So, meaning that they happened very much like, stages. We meet this stage, we go here. We meet this stage, we go here. At 7, we come to a certain particular ability to do something. Piaget didn't have those kinds of stages. We do know with Piaget that it doesn't happen quite that distinctly. So you can think about, what do you agree with? What do you disagree with here? Do you see a blending of the two that's maybe more appropriate? And And then, for our third cognitive theory, we have information processing. So that's the whole idea of that the mind, like a computer, we take information in, we seek units of information, we analyze it, we express it. So it requires memory. We've talked some about this before. Looking at memory again, that we have what's called the sensory register. That we get so much sensory input in, it's less than 1 second. It's kicked out when more information comes in, or it just decays if it's not used. It's based on the senses that we used. What sensory input we attend to, which is what we pay attention to, is then processed into our working memory, or that blackboard in our mind. Current conscious mental activity. We can hold about 7 units of information. That's like a phone number, plus or minus a couple. We have a duration 5 to 20 seconds unless we continue to repeat it. Though some of this is all still in research and what we're learning. Long-term memory, the hippocampus is in charge of taking sensory information, working memory, and then turning it into long-term memory, taking all that information and moving it over with repetition and practice. We believe it's unlimited, but I don't know that that's really known for sure. I think that's still under investigation, how long we can hold it. There is a central executive, which is a theory that enables that we have this central executive in the mind that enables the working memory system to selectively attend to some stimuli and ignore others. That's our selective attention. And so that capacity helps make sense of information and working memory using what we've learned before, drawing up our long-term memory and having 2 subsystems of storage. The phonological, which is like auditory, holds information as spoken words. Written words must be converted into a spoken code before it can enter this phonological store. And we have the visuospatial sketch pad, and helps us keep track of where we are in relation to other objects as we move through our environment. So we have a visual and an auditory storage systems that help support our working memory and, help support all this information being turned into useful information for us to be used, and what we continually attend to, what we continually hold in these places, can get turned into long-term memory. For information processing, there's this idea of we have a knowledge base. That's a body of knowledge. So we think about our school systems and we build knowledge bases as we go. Children have to learn their letters. And once they learn their letters and their sounds of their letters, they can learn to put them together into short words. In order to learn math, we have to know what numbers are, and then we can add them, and then we can subtract them, and this goes up and we kind of build upon it. Past experience, current opportunity, and motivation help create our knowledge base. What are we interested in? What are we going to pay attention to? And the more we do, the bigger our knowledge base. Control processes. We have selective attention and emotional regulation that help to control, with memory, processing speed, and knowledge, how much information comes in and how it flows through us. So these are the processes within our mind that can control the flow and information that we get in our system. Metacognition is the ability to think about our thinking, to evaluate. That's going to happen up behind our forehead, that ability to evaluate what we've done, what we've thought, to determine how we might do it better the next time. All of these things are going to go into helping make our knowledge more efficient and effective, and how we can continue to build. What I would really like you to do is to watch the TED Talk that I have on, building a school in the cloud, and really think about Piaget, Vygotsky, and some of this information processing that we talk about with cognitive tasks, and see if you can see how any of these theories come into play with this information from what Sagatra discovers through his, and I'm hoping I'm saying his name right, discovers through his learning and his explorations in India and across the globe. So watching that video, without giving too much away, watching that video, think, where does Piaget's theory come into play? Where does Vygotsky's theory come into play? Where might information processing come into play? Do I see them? And contrasting it, where is what he's learning moving against what these theories say? Where do I see it not, the zone of proximal development maybe not in play here? That's just something to consider. And then just a couple of others. Language is a really interesting thing in this time. What I want you to know about this in terms of our middle childhood is pragmatics. So the practical use of language that includes the ability to adjust language communication according to audience and context. So children are in a lot of different contexts. They're at school, they're with teachers, they're on the playground with peers, they're at home, they're with grandparents, they're with other friends, they're with whole different bunches of different kinds of people. And they have to figure out what's the cool way to talk with your friends, but what's the okay way to talk with your parents or teachers. They're going to mess this up sometimes. They have a formal language, maybe with their friends, slang. Now we have text code, all that kind of stuff. And then they have whatever's been okay within their family, and then they have to figure out teachers. They're going to start playing with what I call gateway words at this when they get into elementary school, upper elementary school. Crap and suck are big gateway words. They might bring those into the wrong places, and they have to figure this out. Shy children who are good at pragmatics cope better with social pressures because they at least know the lingo, and they can kind of fake their way through it to some extent to keep any kind of bullying or anything like that maybe away from them, to fly under the radar. What else do we have here? Family poverty. Research shows a strong correlation between academic achievement and socioeconomic status. It's going to be value-oriented. Is education valued? Is there a history of it? Is there language exposure? Do we think that it's important to have kids exposed to books, or if we can't get books, then we don't have the resources for it? How much do we, but that poverty and value of education don't go hand in hand everywhere. Like I was listening to a story about a researcher who was in Africa, and they barely had running water or anything, and it was very poor. And he asked the children, how many, kind of supposed to be joking, how many of you just love schoolwork? Well, 95% raised their hand, because they valued it in a way that maybe some of our children don't. So poverty doesn't always mean that, though it does mean what are the resources that allow for learning, and where would Piaget and Vygotsky come in there? So watch that, because I also want you to consider what you think about our school system and our education system in America. And how do you think we're doing? One of the things, we fall behind in numbers sometimes, or on the ranking lists. And I think I've said this before, but we're ahead in innovation. And so what are we missing in our education system? What do you think about No Child Left Behind? What do you think about testing and all the standardized testing we're doing? What do you think needs to be done to fix our education system? What are your ideas? Think about that. Watch this TED Talk. See what he has to say, because this is just one man's input on what he thinks we need for education. Where are we going? What do we need? What are we missing? There's a lot that I could say here. We were in a classroom together, but this would get very long for you, I know. But look into it, research it. I think it's an incredibly valuable discussion and thought process to have. How are we going to educate our next generation of children? And are we educating them now in a way that's going to work for the world that they're entering into? So there's chapter 12. Check out the resources. Thanks.